This is the Locked On Jets podcast. I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. If you're new to the show, this is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday, and bonus episodes to break down big news like this one. The 2025 NFL Draft is now complete. The New York Jets added 4 additional players on the third and final day of the draft. Let's break down the newest members of the New York Jets. The Jets began the day with an early fourth-round pick, 110th overall. And heading into the day, I think many people thought they would draft a wide receiver with that selection. The Jets entered the weekend with wide receiver as one of their biggest needs, and they were not able to address it on the first 2 nights of the draft. The Jets did pick a wide receiver at 110th overall early in the 4th round. It was a receiver few were expecting them to pick, though. It was a guy out of Georgia, Arian Smith. Smith had a kind of a breakout season in 2024. A guy who's very fast, ran the 40-yard dash in 4.36 seconds. And many people would tell you that was kind of a disappointment. There was buzz that he may break the combine record for fastest 40 ever. So when a guy runs the 40 in 4.36 seconds and the reaction is kind of like, oh, that was a little underwhelming. It shows you how fast the guy is. And again, a big year with Georgia as a deep ball specialist. But other parts of his game really need work. I mean, I thought Smith would probably be like an undrafted free agent or a 7th-round pick. I thought maybe he could slip into the 6th round. I think this was one of the 5 most shocking developments of the draft, that Smith went up in the high 4th round, because this is a player whose game needs a lot of development. And look, I will root for any player the Jets draft. He just reached his dream of making the NFL. So I don't want to be dismissive. I don't want to be negative. But this is a huge project. It's a player who I did not think was going to get selected anywhere near the 4th round. Outside of his deep ball route running, he's got to work on the nuances of running routes in the short and intermediate spaces. He's a little undersized, 6 feet, 179 pounds. So he's going to struggle against bigger, more physical corners. And I think the biggest issue with him is, he doesn't have very good hands, or he did not show very good hands in college. Drops were an issue. He had 10 drops in 2024. For his career, his drop rate was around 20%. And, we're talking about a wide receiver. Your number one job is to catch the ball as a wide receiver. So, if you have issues with drops to that extent, it is a concern. Clearly, the Jets think that he's got ability that they can develop. And this, if they're able to turn him into a quality receiver, it would be a great coaching job. And it would be a very encouraging development for this new regime of Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji. But this is a player whose game needs an awful lot of work. I am genuinely very surprised that the Jets picked him where they did. One other thing he does bring to the table, and I don't think this alone would lead you to draft him at the top of the 4th round, but Arian Smith is a very good gunner in punt coverage. And gunners are the guys that line up out wide and kind of just shoot down run down the field as the ball is kicked. They try and tackle or force a fair catch from the return guy. The last 2 years, Arian Smith was a gunner on Georgia's punt teams, and the Georgia Bulldogs allowed a combined 23 punt return yards over the last 2 years. So a talented gunner. I frequently argue that teams should focus more on special teams as they build their roster. But I mean, even I have my limits. I would not draft a guy in the 4th round solely on the basis of him being an effective gunner. We'll see. We'll root for Arian Smith. I thought it was a very surprising pick. The Jets' second pick of the day was also in the 4th round. They actually traded up. They traded 2 picks, 145 and 207 to the Philadelphia Eagles. They moved up to 130 overall and picked a safety out of Alabama, Malachi Moore. And I will tell you that of the 4 players the Jets selected on Saturday, Malachi Moore is my favorite. He's a guy with versatility. He's played all over Alabama's defense. He lined up at the deep safety position. He lined up in the box. He played some slot corner for Alabama. And I think the reason he fell to the 4th round is he's not a very imposing physical specimen. He's a little undersized. He's not super fast, but he's fundamentally sound. He knows where he needs to be. He's in the right spot. He's in the right place at the right time. And he's a pretty sound tackler. And, when we talk about the safety position, like there's always a lot of focus on the physical tools. How much ground do you cover? That matters. But the most important job for a safety is be in the right place at the right time, because you're the last line of defense. So you better be where you need to be, because your job is essentially to clean up when somebody else makes a mistake. So yeah, like having range and being fast is great, but I don't want a Calvin Pryor or an Ashton Davis who, yeah, maybe they cover a lot of ground, but they run themselves into the wrong spot and they leave a huge hole in the back of the defense. And a bad play that could go for 15 yards turns into a disaster play that goes for 40 yards. You want to avoid that. So I think that Malachi Moore is the type of guy who he's going to be a solid safety. I usually would not say this about a guy drafted day 3, but I would not be shocked if Malachi Moore challenged for a starting safety job in training camp. I think he was very fundamentally sound, and part of this goes to the Jets' current state of the Jets safety position, where you have Andre Sisco, who I think will start, but Tony Adams, who you can live with, but you wouldn't mind upgrading from. I really would not be shocked if Malachi Moore challenged Tony Adams for a starting safety job. And if short of that, I would not be shocked if Malachi Moore became the number 3 safety and got some playing time in big nickel packages where Jets put 3 safeties on the field. I really liked this pick. I think this was a really solid pick by the Jets early day 3. I think Moore has for a day 3 pick. And look, day 3 picks, the odds are always against them. But there's some positions where your odds are better than others. And safety is a spot where you can find a guy on day 3. And I think the reason Moore fell was not about his game per se. I think it was more about his lack of great physical tools. But those only matter so much. I think Moore has the attributes to play safety successfully in the NFL. So I'm very hopeful about that pick. Now, during the Locked On Jets podcast, there are 2 more players to discuss. The Jets focused on the defensive side of the ball at the end of day 3 of the draft. They added a couple of players, one defensive lineman, one's a linebacker. We'll talk about where they could fit in as we continue here on this special post-draft edition of the Locked On Jets podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by LinkedIn. As a small business owner, your work does not end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Here's how it works. You post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high-quality hires. Of course, the Jets have a scouting department to find new employees. That's what they use to find the players they're going to draft. Your business probably can't afford a scouting department like the Jets have. LinkedIn could be your scouting department. You'll find the best qualified candidates for your open positions. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Because right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. You got to love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into player props. From 3-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways for you to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for your chance to win big. NBA playoffs are here. If you're a Knicks fan, you're probably very excited, but of course you may not be a Knicks fan. You may root for another team in the league. Your team could be in the playoffs. If they're not, FanDuel is a great way to get in on the action. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com to claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Again, FanDuel.com and claim that $250 in bonus bets today. FanDuel.com. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listener, first watch every day. Big shout out to you everydayers. If you're new to the show, this is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. Let's continue now breaking down day 3 of the 2025 NFL draft. We've talked about the first 2 players the Jets picked. Let's go on to number 3. With the 162nd pick, the Jets selected a linebacker out of Miami, Francisco Mauigoa. This is a guy who I think the Jets are probably looking at as a backup linebacker and perhaps a core special teamer. And I think like one of the themes of day 3 of the draft is the Jets look for players who kind of have good instincts on defense, or, in the case of the first guy they drafted, Smith out of Georgia, guy with his track record on special teams. I got the feeling based on the picks that they made that they do value special teams. Mauigoa is kind of a guy who I view as physically limited. He's kind of a little undersized for the linebacker position. I did not get the sense that he was overly athletic, but a guy with good instincts, a guy who reads plays well in front of him, guy who, another guy who like knows where he needs to be. He's probably not big or strong enough to shed blocks all that effectively. I don't know that he's got like the movement skills to go sideline to sideline. I think he's more of like a north and south guy. I don't know that he's a great coverage guy, but he's a guy who can kind of be like a thumper in the run game, a guy who could stop the run effectively. And I think those instincts could serve him well as a special teamer. He could kind of be like a core special teamer on coverage units. I think he's a guy the Jets might look as a backup for Jamie and Sherwood and Quincy Williams. Also, actually an okay blitzer, and Aaron Glenn does like to send his linebackers on blitzes. I think that like you never know. Like I could be wrong on this, but I think he's a guy who probably tops out as somebody like he's like a hold the fort guy. If you have like a 2-3 week injury, I think that he probably would get exposed if he was out there longer. But type of guy, like I think when you're talking about the 5th round of the draft, you're kind of looking for somebody who is a good backup. If you find a quality backup at this stage of the draft, I think you've done pretty well. It's not like the first round where you need to get a starter or you failed. I think Mauigoa offers some interesting tools, and I don't know, maybe his instincts are so good that he can make up for his struggles. I mean, there certainly have been linebackers in the past who maybe haven't been the most physically gifted guys, but because they read plays well and because they know where to be and because they know where the ball is going in advance, they can overcome maybe some physical limitations. I don't know if Mauigoa can quite do that to the level where he could be a starter, but I do think he could be a viable backup. And for the range the Jets drafted him, I do think a viable backup would be considered a win for that pick. And then the final selection the Jets made was another trade up. They moved up from 186 to 176, and in moving 10 slots, they flipped 2026 picks with Baltimore. And with the new pick, the Jets selected Tyler Barron. He's an edge rusher also out of Miami. So the Jets draft 2 Miami defenders in the final day of the NFL draft. Barron's a guy who, again, I would keep expectations low. The way I view him is like maybe a number 4 defensive end, like a rotational guy who can get a handful of snaps. Prospect on the older side, 24, which is a bit old for a prospect. Not like the best mover, not the most physically gifted guy, has a couple pass rushing moves. So, when at this stage of the draft, a role player is a perfectly acceptable outcome for a pick. For first round, you need an impact player. Second round, you need a good starter. By the time we're talking like mid to late day 3, and you're just getting somebody who can like fill a role for your team, like the number 4 defensive end, the guy who can give you a couple snaps a game and give you some relatively decent production, has a few tools at his disposal. That's perfectly fine. I think Barron, has like actually a fairly refined set of pass rush moves for a rookie. Uses his hands effectively. He's not super explosive, and I think like if you see those moves enough time, you'll be able to kind of stonewall him as an offensive lineman. But if he's only playing a couple snaps a game, maybe he can produce enough, giving your top 3 defensive ends some rest. I think that's ultimately the goal. I think he's I would be surprised if he was more than a number 4 defensive end. But look, getting good snaps at a number 4 defensive end would be a good thing. And for this stage of the draft, I think a number 4 defensive end would be a pretty good outcome. But that's all for today's special edition of Locked On Jets. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you enjoyed all of our coverage during the draft. We'll be back on Monday. Again, this is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets. We have a new episode each day, Monday through Friday. We'll be back Monday. We'll talk more Jets. We'll break down the draft in even more detail. Can't wait to talk to you then.